Hey, everybody, wake up, Patriots. This is Larry Swikart. I'm not Ed Henry, and I'm not the guy who was filling in for Ed Henry. Apparently, there was a flood in his house. He lost power, was in knee deep in water. So here I am. So, welcome, everybody. It is July 9th, 2024. And some of the things we're going to talk about are this wild weekend involving Biden. Is he going to drop out? Is he not going to drop out? And the media coup that was attempted. They're kind of still attempting it, but they may be backing off a little. But this is a first in American history, and I'll tell you why. The clock. I have an update on Ohio. It may seem bad, but in fact, it's pretty good. It's ironic. And then, of course, we will get to polling, the most recent polls, which are all bad for Biden and all really good for President Trump. So we'll get to all that. But I thought today we would start with something just a little bit different, a little bit on the lighter side. As some of you may know, I was a rock and roll drummer for many years, for perhaps 10 years. And we toured opening for Steppenwolf, Born to Be Wild, the James Gang, Savoy Brown, a British blues group that was really good. We were friends of the Allman Brothers and were given backstage passes to their concert in Cincinnati. I didn't go, but my singer went to a party with Mick Jagger. The Who sat through our set at the Troubadour. So I thought you might find this little story humorous. We were playing in Flagstaff, Arizona on Halloween night. And I mean, everybody was dressed up. We had the Mummy, we had Draculas, we had Frankensteins, everything. And we were on a really big stage. I would say the stage was at least 5 foot high, big stage. And on each side of it, there was an open space, and we had our giant PA voice of God speakers. These are about 6 foot high speakers and about 3 feet wide, just giant speakers at the time. But behind those, we threw all of our soft packing and blankets and all the stuff we'd use to pack our stuff in. So you could fall off the stage and it wouldn't hurt you. So anyway, our guitar player named Chuck used to have this bad habit of launching into the Jimi Hendrix version of the Star Spangled Banner just on a whim. So we finished a song. By the way, my set was huge. It was gigantic. I couldn't easily get out from behind my set or get back into it. It took a little time. So Chuck launches into the Star Spangled Banner at the end of a song, and everybody else leaves the stage because they know he's going to be there for 10 minutes. And I'm stuck. So I'm just kind of rat-a-tatting along behind him, hitting some cymbals and stuff. And crowd's loving it. He's doing all the feedback Jimi Hendrix stuff. And then he starts going over to his amp and rubbing his guitar up against his amp, making all these noises. And all of a sudden, he breaks the frets off his guitar doing that. And he looks at me and goes, "What do I do?" Now, his guitar is just giving off these horrible sounds. This feedback stuff. And I said, "Well, break something. They like it when you break stuff." So Chuck lifts his guitar above his head. Now, Chuck is a big guy. He was about 6'1", about 270, 280, big guy, strong. He lifts his guitar up and he's just holding it above his head and it's going, and the crowd's going crazy. And he throws it down on stage because after all, he can't hurt it too much more. The frets are off. And the crowd goes nuts and it's making these noises. He said, "What do I do?" I said, "Keep breaking stuff." So he lifts it up again and he throws it off stage. Now, remember, he can't really hurt it too much off stage. It's off stage making these horrible noises. And crowd's going crazy. And he goes, "What do I do now?" I go, "Well, keep breaking stuff." So he was playing this stack of Marshall amplifiers. Now, each one of these was about 3 feet high and 3 feet wide, and they were heavy, big Marshall boxes. And he had a double stack of them. So his whole stack was over 6 feet tall. He goes over and he grabs one of these Marshall amplifiers, a heavy amp, and he lifts it over his head like a giant holding a rock. And the guitar's going crazy off stage. And the crowd's going nuts. Yeah. So he throws the amp off stage. He didn't know that the cord was wound around his leg. And all of a sudden, you remember the Roadrunner cartoons when you would see the Roadrunner's body disappear, but his head would still be there, and then he'd go away? That was Chuck. Chuck's body literally disappeared, and he was looking at me, and he's gone off stage. So he's off stage, and the guitar's going, and I just have to walk off stage myself, crawl out from behind my drums. So, sometimes you just have to go with it. All right. Well, let's get into what happened over the weekend, because this is some amazing stuff. So last Friday, the media thought they had Biden. Now, this is amazing, and it's a first in American history. You can check out my book, Patriots, History of the United States. We talk about this. Back in 1972, Richard Nixon ran against the perfect East Coast establishment candidate, George McGovern. At the time, McGovern was in favor of all the stuff that the elites wanted: into the Vietnam War, legalized pot, crazy civil rights kind of legislation. Whatever was nutty, McGovern was for it. Nixon was viewed as the hard hat president. He was always, supported by the hard hats, the laboring Americans. So in the election of 1972, Nixon just destroyed McGovern. I can't remember the actual electoral vote, but it was way over 400. And Nixon won every state except, I think, Massachusetts and the District of Columbia, and got something like 60% of the vote. It was a monster crushing of the liberal elites candidate. Well, they freaked out. They said, one editor is quoted by Paul Johnson in his book Modern Times saying, "There's got to be a bloodletting. We've got to make sure nothing like this ever happens again in America," meaning that the people actually get the candidate that they want, that they humiliate the elites. Well, of course, you know the rest of the story. The Woodward and Bernstein and all the rest of the media jumped in, and they managed to get Nixon out on what was essentially a single obstruction of justice charge when he stupidly went along with John Dean, who masterminded Watergate. You got to remember, Nixon didn't think of Watergate. It was John Dean. He didn't serve nearly enough time. He should still be in prison today. But and the reason Dean did it, and I've done a lot of research on this, I've read all this stuff. Apparently, his fiance's name was in a call girl book, and somehow the Republicans Dean learned that this call girl book was in a desk in the Democrat National Committee headquarters at the Watergate building. And this wasn't the main guy's desk. It wasn't the head of the DNC. It was some low-level state guy. So Dean knew exactly what he wanted, and he sent Liddy and Hunt and the rest of the Cubans in to take pictures of the book and see if his wife, later wife, then fiance's name was in this book. And he didn't tell Nixon about it. Well, later, when the investigation started, Dean told Nixon, but said, this is a matter of national security, and fed him some lie about why Nixon had to cover this up, using the CIA to tell the FBI to back off. Don't you love it? The three-letter agencies. That's where Nixon broke the law. That's the first time he heard about it, but he went along with obstructing justice. So anyway, the media helped the Democrats in Congress stage a coup and remove Nixon in 1974. So what's going on here? Well, we have a media coup. And over the last weekend, you saw hit pieces. Now remember, these are all liberal rags. Many of them are the preferred mouthpieces of the Democrat National Committee. Okay. And we had hit pieces in the Washington Compost, the Atlanta Urinal Constipation, as Rush Limbaugh used to call it, the New York Slimes, Politico, Axios, and The Hill. I mean, these were big hit pieces, and they thought they could push Biden out. Well, no. They had no idea what was going to happen if they did. This is the astounding thing. None of these people really thought too hard about what would happen if Biden suddenly backed out of the race. Now, remember, there's two aspects to this. Biden could back out of the race as the nominee, but still be president until January 2025, in theory. In reality, how can he do that? I mean, most people would say, no, that's impossible. If he's not fit to be a candidate, he ain't fit to be president. But that's what they were dealing with. This is kind of a magical unicorn quest that they were on. And somehow they were going to put in gruesome Newsom of California, Gavin Newsom, or even Hillary Clinton again, somehow, or of course, Kamala Harris. Now, there was also talk at the time of Michelle Obama and Gretchen Whitmer. And over the weekend, they both took themselves out of consideration right away. Michelle Obama says, it's not in my soul. And just yesterday, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, governor, backed out, said, no, I have no interest. So now they're really stuck. If they get Biden out, they are stuck with Harris. And these dreams have really faded. Well, Newsom threw his hat in with Biden and went to Pennsylvania to stump. And it was, by the way, it was there that Biden, I'm not sure he was actually there, but he referenced this and he said, Pennsylvania elected me to the Senate. He's from Delaware. But don't let that bother you. Hillary is a non-starter. She's already lost once. She's been beaten by Trump once. She's at least as unpopular as Harris. So all of these things started to fall apart over the weekend. The journalist coup was fairly short-lived. So another part of their coup failed on two fronts. First, last week, Biden had a meeting with all the governors. It was a Zoom-type meeting. And although they expressed big concerns, reportedly, both Whitmer and the governor of New Mexico told him they did not think he would carry their states. Now, think about that. They're ceding Michigan already, and New Mexico was not considered to be a Trump state. New Mexico's dynamics, folks, are really tough for Republicans. It's a very poor state. Number one, they have a lot of welfare, a lot of government aid. Number two, there's the other end of the spectrum is they've got a lot of upper class elites who work at Sandia and Los Alamos. And the middle in New Mexico is very small. Now, interestingly, the Hispanics in New Mexico are more pro-Trump than the population as a whole. So this is where he stands to make up ground. Nevertheless, the last couple of polls have shown President Trump down by 2 points. Now, remember, the polls always underestimate Trump's support, usually by anywhere from 2 to 3 points. So does he have a shot in New Mexico? Yes. If the election were today, would he win it? I think not, but it would be pretty close. So the governors, including Newsom, all reluctantly rallied behind Biden and said, we're with him. He's our guy. So the other area where this coup failed over the weekend was on Saturday. word started to leak out that the Senate Democrats were pushing to have Biden removed from the ticket, but not from the presidency. Again, there's all sorts of problems with that. But anyway, this apparently fizzled. I think Mark Warner of Virginia was leading this, and it just fizzled. And by Monday, and you may know this, Biden wrote this really testy letter in which he was saying that he was all in. Nobody was going to push him out. He said, unless God has other plans. And God's up there going, let me think about that. So by Monday, 3 elements of the coup had really failed. The journalists couldn't push him out. The governors rallied to his side, and the Senate decided to hang with him a while. So this is a big problem for the journalists. They weren't getting their big coup that they wanted. And again, it's not clear exactly what they were going to do if they got him out, except perhaps run Harris. So what I want to do next, I'm going to do an ad right now. And then when we come back, I'm going to go in detail. And I don't usually do this, but I think you should hear this in detail into a New York Magazine piece that came out, I think, Sunday. And this was brutal because New York Mag, of course, is liberal. And the writer admits he was a liberal kind of Biden fan. And what he has to say about Biden in this piece is it's rather shocking. So that's why I want to read it to you. Well, as you know, America's facing a lot of problems, a lot of dangers, and it's a kind of danger only real Americans can prepare for, real Americans are ready for. And so what makes a real American? A defender of truth, a freedom fighter, somebody who can see what's coming, who knows what the government will and won't do. And usually they won't help. Real Americans prepare with My Patriot Supply. Since 2008, My Patriot Supply has helped millions of Americans prepare for all sorts of emergencies. We're not just talking a kind of crazy government lockdown, but we're talking about floods. We're talking about tornadoes. We're talking about anything that causes your power to go down or your water supply to have difficulties. So today, their popular 4-week emergency food kits are flying off the shelves. Get yours today with preparewithvnn.com, Vigilant News Network, preparewithvnn.com. Each food kit offers over 2,000 calories per day, plus very durable 4-layer packaging that can hold its quality for 25 years. So even if you don't need it right now, you're probably going to need it at some point. Order as many kits as you want and get $50 off on the first one. That is, save $50 on the first kit, and free shipping is included. So stock up on your essential food items and your food kits at preparewithvnn.com. That's preparewithvnn.com. All right, so let's take a look at this New York Magazine piece. Again, this captures the media's attempt to overthrow Biden. And it's not clear if they want him gone just as a candidate or as the president as well. But here's a piece from this New York Magazine story. And again, this is a pro-Biden guy. And he says, quote, he sets all this up by not mentioning the location, but he says the Secret Service agents were all standing around. The flags were there. The stage was ready. The teleprompters were fired up. Okay. Biden was going to talk to a few dozen donors at a private residence, and he needed a teleprompter. They don't even trust him in private. Okay. And this is before, this story came out before that story yesterday surfaced that showed his instructions for giving a speech. Did you see this? And so one of the instructions is walk to the podium. And he dodders over to the podium. Anyway, here's what the New York Magazine reporter wrote. I want to get this right so you don't accuse me of misquoting. Speaking of Biden, his thin skin, long a figurative problem, and now a literal one, was pulled tightly over cheeks that seemed to vary month to month in volume. So he's noticing it looks like he's had plastic surgery or something. Under artificial light and in the sunshine, he took on an unnatural gleam. He looked, well, inflated. His eyes were half shut or open very wide. They appeared darker than they once had. His pupils dilated. I think we could say there were some other reasons for that. Let's go ahead. He did not blink at regular intervals. The White House often did not engage when questions about the president's stare, the 1,000-yard stare, which sometimes raised alarm on social media when documented in official videos produced by the White House. Now, remember, last time I was with you, I talked about how at first the White House was claiming these videos were deep fakes. And then somebody pointed out, dude, they're yours. They came from the White House. Okay. So they can't claim they're fakes. All of this followed the memo that came out last week, where they said that Biden could only function from 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And then after that, he told, I think it was Stephanopoulos, or Snuffleupagus as I call him, he told him on that interview that he needed to get more sleep. Dude, you're working 10 to 4 and you need more sleep? Come on, man. So this was bad. I mean, this is really bad. And so you can see how they are going after him now. And the New York Times then followed up with something they haven't done, which was they started to attack his campaign strategy. And they were saying that, maybe attacking Trump isn't the best idea. Now, by the way, have you noticed that President Trump has said very little about Biden, his condition, or the debates? Trump has been remarkably quiet, and this is driving them crazy, folks. They're going nuts that Trump isn't giving them anything to attack him with. And you know why that is? I'll give you the reason in 2 words. Sally Miles. Sally Miles took over as his campaign manager and has done an amazing job. Now, I know that she has a lot of critics because she may be at heart a rhino, but in fact, she's a winner. She knows how to win campaigns, and she has disciplined President Trump to where he stays on message. One of my favorite scenes in all movies is the first Star Wars that came out, which now is renamed number 4, I think, called A New Hope. But they're attacking the Death Star, and the TIE fighters are going in, and they're being shot down, they're being shot at, and all they would say is, stay on target, stay on target. And that's exactly what Trump is doing. He is staying on message and isn't shaken by that at all. So Biden has this fundraiser that's recorded in the New York Magazine. And then what happens next? He has to cancel fundraisers in Wisconsin. The donors aren't showing up. You may have heard the story last week that Abigail Disney, who is the granddaughter of Roy Disney. Roy was Walt's brother who did all the financing for Disneyland and the Disney pictures. Theirs is an amazing story. And if you ever get a chance to read a biography, it's by a leftist, but it's really good. It's by Neil Gabler on Walt Disney, and I urge you to read that. The guy had so much in common with Ronald Reagan, for example, how they grew up, how they viewed America. Well, Roy Disney was always the financial brains of the Disney empire, but his granddaughter is a total left-wing loon. Anyway, she's a big Democrat donor, but she announced last week, that's it, no more. I'm not giving to any more Democrat funds at all until Biden is gone. So there's kind of a donors revolt. Now, there is also another issue at stake here, which is exactly what can Biden run on? If he can't attack Trump, how does he run on this record? Well, I know you say he lies, and that's true. He does. He lies constantly. He did that one speech after the Snuffleupagus appearance, in which he lied 7 times in a single speech about obvious stuff. Just, this is the kind of thing like his son was killed in Iraq or some nonsense like that. It's just crazy, crazy stuff. So even with all of their protections, they're having major problems keeping Biden focused on anything, let alone what he can do to derail President Trump. And later in the show, in our last segment, I'm going to get to the polling, and the polling here is pretty bad. But what they're counting on is that Trump will become the issue, not Biden. And so far in this cycle, it's been just the opposite. Biden, and only Biden, has been the issue. So what did they want? Well, let's say they get their way, and which I don't think they will. And we're going to talk about the clock coming up here in just a minute. But let's say they get their way and they push Biden out as the candidate. Now, leave aside for a moment the earlier issue I raised of if he's not fit to be a candidate, how's he fit to be president? But let's say he does, and he hangs on until January. But instead, they elevate Harris because, as we showed, she's the only one really left standing. Harris is incredibly detested in Democrat circles. One wag in the Democrat Party yesterday said the dirty little secret is she's stupid. He used that word. He said she's stupid and she doesn't campaign well. And, our side is so constantly fearful. I have to tell us all the time, tell all the meetings I go to, be not afraid. Fear not. God has not given you the spirit of fear, timidity, weakness, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Don't be McClellan's. I have to say that all the time. But our side is so conditioned to losing after 2020 and 2022 that they're shell-shocked. They're abused spouses. And so they're constantly looking for ways to explain away a loss rather than take the win. And we're at a position where we can take a very, very big win no matter what happens. But let's say, for argument's sake, that Biden drops out as the candidate and Harris becomes the candidate. What happens then? First of all, she would probably appoint a vice president who would be her running mate. Now, it's not necessary. She could appoint a running mate who is not the vice president. That's constitutional. No problem with that. Lincoln did it. In 1864, Hannibal Hamlin was his current vice president, but he chose Andrew Johnson of Tennessee as his running mate because he didn't think he was going to get reelected. So she could choose somebody else. But whoever she chooses for vice president, both the House and the Senate must sign off on that. They must approve that choice. And so it's doubtful that they would give her someone who would enhance her likelihood of winning. Not impossible with Mike Johnson and his crazy crew, but it's unlikely, I think, on a very basic elementary school level that they would oppose any candidate she proposed as vice president if it enhanced her chances of winning. And that's why I think there's a chance that she might appoint different vice presidents and running mates if they force Biden out. And again, I'm going to show you why I don't think they can do that. So she comes in as the candidate. What does she run on, folks? Does she run on Biden's record that he can't even run on that's so bad? Remember, she's a bad campaigner. She flubs up as much as he does, and she's not even got Alzheimer's. She has trouble putting basic facts together. Okay. What is she going to run on? And people, again, our side, who's always conditioned to losing, goes, oh, she's a black woman. Big deal. The polling shows she polls 2 to 3 points worse than Biden does at this time, and he's getting crushed. Well, she's a black woman. Blacks don't accept her. She is West Indian from a slave owner family. They do not accept her as genuine, as down for the struggle, as coming from a genuine American, African American background. So she picks up no help from black voters. So there you have it. I see no way that they replace Biden, number one. But number two, I see no way they replace him with anybody who's even remotely more attractive as a candidate than he is, even if they may not be senile. It's just they're stuck. Our side needs to understand, folks, they're stuck. They blundered into this when over a year ago, they ran with the lawfare strategy. In 2020, they ran with the cheat strategy. They used the 5 months of COVID, 5 months of mules, to bring in all sorts of harvested ballots. Okay. They're not doing that this time. They're apparently shifting a little bit toward that's too late. But they ran with lawfare. They were absolutely convinced that President Trump would be taken out with lawfare. And that just hasn't worked for them. And that's why they didn't remove Biden earlier as the nominee. And there's one last thing I want you guys to consider here. And I know you're going to say, well, Democrats don't care. And it's true, but at some level, the people do have a say, whether you're Democrat or Republican. So consider this. Biden won the Democrat primaries. He won 90% of the Democrat primary votes and ballots. You can't just disenfranchise that many people and the whole primary process and think it won't have badly damaging effects on the whole system. They are, just by doing all this, introducing a level of chaos that is eating away at their party base. I don't know how much, but I'm suspecting that every day that goes by that there is this chaos, they are losing more and more voters who are just going, I can't keep up. I don't want to vote for the Alzheimer's guy, but I don't know who will take his place. I'm just walking away. Believe me, that is going on out there. You're going to see Democrat turnout much, much lower than it was in 2020, even if you believe 81 million votes, right? But you're going to see a much lower Democrat turnout because of all of this stuff. Okay, let me find my ad here. Here we go. All right. We all want to lose weight. Who doesn't want to lose 5 pounds? Everybody's talking about the weight loss injections. Like, I can't say the name, but it gives you the runs and has all sorts of other side effects. It does cause you to lose a lot of weight, but you've got all sorts of problems that come with it. They're dramatic, and they work by lowering blood sugar and reducing your appetite. But what if you need to lose some weight, but you don't have money and you don't want weekly shots? That's why doctors created a weight loss supplement called Lean LEAN, and the results are remarkable. Doctors studied ingredients in lean, and they've been shown to lower your blood sugar, burn fat by converting it to energy. And then they curb your appetite and your craving so you're not as hungry. Now, it's important to understand lean is not for a casual dieter who wants to lose just 5 pounds. This is if you've got 10 pounds or more. But the doctors at Brickhouse Nutrition created lean for frustrated dieters that have more than 10 pounds they want to lose. So let's get you started with 15% off and a free rush shipping so you can add lean to your healthy diet and your exercise plan. You got to do both. Got to diet. You got to have a little exercise. Visit leanvnn.com. That's leanvnn.com and enter the code VNN for your 15% discount. That's promo code VNN when you go to leanvnn.com. That's leanvnn.com. I got ahead of myself there. Okay, we don't want to do that. All right. The clock. You know, I've talked to you guys a lot about the clock, and I missed something. I've been talking about the Ohio deadline of August 7th. Well, Governor DeWine up there in Ohio, I met this guy once, long story. Anyway, he and the legislature changed the date to help the Democrats. Surprise. And so they changed the date from being 90 days out, where you had to have your candidate named, which would put you at August 7th, to 65 days out. In other words, they made it so the Democrats could have their regular convention and still nominate Biden. Are you ready for this? The Democrats were so rattled originally, thinking he would not do that, they blinked. They're the ones who changed their system to accommodate the Ohio law that has now been changed to accommodate them, but it's too late. They announced earlier, about 2 weeks ago, they would have a virtual convention on July 27th. And that was the date that I took, because that's what they said. Well, I missed it. They had to, I keep going on about ballots. Ballots are physical things that must be mailed out or sent out by email, whatnot. Usually physical mail is required because everybody doesn't get email the same way, and so on and so forth. So they had to send out ballots. And who let this cat out of the bag but our old friend Donna Brazile? You know, the woman who leaked the questions in the debates in 2020 to the Biden team, Donna Brazile. And she was on one of the talk shows, and she let this cat out of the bag. She said, oh, the ballots have already gone out to the delegates. There's thousands of these delegates. Ballots have already gone out, she said, and they are due back by Friday. We're talking 3 days from now. They're due back in 3 days. Now, some may be late, but most of them are going to come back before the weekend. What does that mean? That means they're going to be counted probably by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. In other words, they got 1 week before Biden is nominated. Why? Because 90% of these ballots are Biden delegates whom he won in a free and fair election. And they're not going to change their votes. And I think in many states, they can't. I'd have to look that up, but I seem to remember that a lot of states passed laws saying people can't just willy-nilly change from what they pledged they were going to do. And so it looks as though by next Monday, Tuesday, you're going to have Biden nominated virtually before the July 27th official nomination. And that's all because of that Ohio law that the Ohio GOP changed to help out the Democrats. But they waited so long that the Democrats freaked out and changed their system. So how many of these people will defect? I say very, very few. Um, so all the predictions that they would switch out, and there's some people on Twitter, you know who I'm talking about. Oh, they're gonna make the switch at the convention. Folks, the convention doesn't come till the second week in August. Biden will have been the candidate for at least 3 weeks, maybe 4. They can't switch him out. They're stuck with him once they make him the candidate in about a week. Get it? That's why this clock business was always so critically important. Is these processes start, and once you get on with these processes, it's like a doomsday device. You can't shut it off. There's nothing you can do with it, and there's nowhere you can go with it. So I think the media, while they are still running a few Biden hit pieces, I think the media understands that they failed in this coup. Now, let me remind you, the reason this is historically so critical is because it's the first time in American history that the hoax news media has gone after a Democrat. They went after Reagan for Iran-Contra. They went after Bush for Abu Ghraib. Do you remember that the New York Times ran something like 20 pieces on Abu Ghraib in the weeks following that, the revelation of that news? Okay. They went after Clinton just a little tiny bit for the Lewinsky thing, but then they started to cover up for him by saying, oh, it's just sex, which of course it wasn't. It was obstruction of justice, worse than what Nixon did, because he was fooled into thinking he was doing it for national security reasons. Clinton knew he wasn't doing it for national security reasons. So I think the media has understood that their coup has failed, that they have not been able to remove Rutabaga, and that they're going to be stuck with him. And that's why you're already seeing a few of these hit pieces come out on Kamala. I think these are warning pieces saying, no, you can't nominate her because this stuff is going to come out. Now, remember, Michelle's taken herself out. Whitmer's taken herself out. Newsom is already thrown in with Biden by appearing on the stump for him. So you're pretty much out of options here. All right. I'm going to go to our last ad here, and then I'm going to get into a lot of polling and walk you through some polling. So we are sponsored by the wellness company. That's twc.health wake up. And they provide medical emergency kits and supplements. You've seen Ed take these supplements all the time on the show. I don't have my kit from the wellness company, or I'd be taking them too. God knows we all need supplements, right? And I think one of the things that COVID has done is to, first of all, put a great deal of distrust in the established medical profession that doctors always know best. I think a lot of Americans are rethinking that. And the second thing it's done is to make companies like the wellness company much more attractive because, whether it was ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, all of these supplements during COVID proved to be very effective. So check out the wellness company, twc.healthwakeup.com, and make sure you get what's good for your health. All right. Polling. Where are we in polling? Nate Silver this week, who's still regarded as kind of a guru by many of these people with his 538, said Biden only has a 28% chance of winning. And then he went on to say, honestly, I think I'm overestimating that. So there's a lot of concern. What would happen after the debates? Where would the polls go? And there were a couple of polls last week that were just simply screwy. One was the Morning Consult swing state poll that only had a sample of 600 people. Now that's really, really low when you're doing 6 or 7 states. 100 people a state, I mean, that's too big a margin of error. But they had Trump up in most of them. But then they had crazy stuff, like they had him up 7 points in Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, folks, no way, not a chance. Trump will win Pennsylvania, but it's only going to be by a point or two. They had him down 5 in Michigan. Again, crazy. It's theoretically possible he could lose Michigan, but it would only be by a point. And again, remember, almost all pollsters understate President Trump's support. There was a second poll that came out, also had a few wacky numbers in it. And yet, all of these polls, even the crazy ones like Morning Consult nationally, still had the race heavily Trump. So we had last week 4 big polls come out: CBS, New York Times, I think, Atlas. There was one other. And Barris weighed in with an unconfirmed poll. He didn't put out his results, but he said they basically supported all those results. And what did those results say? All of them had President Trump at around 6% lead nationally over Biden. Now, folks, do you know what that means? Republicans can win by losing the popular vote by a point, as George W. Bush did in 2000, as Trump did in 2016. If Republicans are leading in the national sample, they are going to win the Electoral College, because it is structured in such a way that it favors Republicans. So if Trump were leading by just 1 or 2 points nationally, he would win with probably 300 to 320 electoral votes, maybe more. But if he's leading by 6, you're talking about a lot of swing states. And Barris confirmed this on his analysis, that you're looking at Minnesota, Maine, Virginia, and New Mexico all being toss-ups. That these are, and so you're looking at 340 or more electoral votes. Well, what happened this week? Signal, another of these pollsters, came out with a swing state poll. And where was it? Exactly where all those other swing state polls were, leaving aside that Morning Consult outlier. And that is Trump up everywhere, usually by 2 to 5 points. 5 points in a place like Georgia, 4 or 5 points in Arizona, a couple of points each in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, which is where I think pretty much it is. But there was some even more interesting news that came out. This will affect polling and, of course, affect the outcome. And that was that Robert Kennedy has been put on the ballot as a libertarian in the state of Colorado. Now, Colorado went from being +1 Republican to +2 or 3 Democrat in a period of just about 3 years. This was all the California invasion. All the Californians were moving to Colorado, and it became a very liberal state almost overnight. It was sad to see. Colorado used to be a reliable Republican state. But the liberals in Colorado are more libertarian leaning than pure liberal welfare state leaning. And that's why Bobby Kennedy being on the ballot there is so critical. He's going to draw probably 10 to 12% of the final vote there. Now, I know you're saying, well, he's polling 13 to 15%. I get it, but what happens with third-party candidates on election day is that people go in and they go, do I want to waste a vote? He's not going to win. Am I just going to make a statement, or am I going to vote for somebody who actually has a chance to win? And what you find is that, with a few exceptions, John Anderson in the 1980s, Ross Perot in 1992, with a few exceptions, the numbers of these third-party candidates drop precipitously between what their polling is and what they really get at the ballot box. So if Bobby's getting 13, 14, 15%, he's not going to get that at the ballot box in most cases. He'll end up with somewhere between 5 to 7 And he's not going to be in the ballot in many states, including Arizona and Georgia, because it's too hard for him to get on the ballot there. But Colorado is very important in this regard because of its libertarian orientation. That means that Bobby could theoretically pull enough off Joe Biden in Colorado to give Trump a squeaker of a victory there. I do think that's possible. I mean, Trump right now is losing Colorado by about 4 or 5 points. But again, if Bobby pulls enough there, and by the way, Barris's polling was showing Jill Stein, you know her, the Green Party candidate. Nobody really thinks about her. Well, she's pulling consistently a few points, and these all come from Biden. They all come from the left. So you combine her and the socialist and who's the black guy, Cornel West and Bobby Kennedy, all sucking off the Democrat line in Colorado. I do believe Trump has a chance. Now, we're still a ways out. We're 3 months out. Well, let's see, August, September, October. Yeah, we're almost at August. We're 3 months out. 3.5. So there's a lot of time for these numbers to change. But the point is, they haven't changed in over a year in terms of the trend. The trend is Donald Trump's friend. Okay. Barris is very strong on the trend, especially when you see these outliers like this poll that had him, Morning Consult had him up 7 in Pennsylvania and down 5 in Michigan. That's just not possible in any universe. But I want to say, because some of you I know get all excited when you see Rasmussen. Rasmussen has been an outlier all this season. You know, every election we go through this, going all the way back to 1994. Some of you are old enough to remember 1994 when Newt Gingrich and the Republicans took the House of Representatives in a shocker. Well, one pollster had that right, John Zogby. And Zogby was the only one who predicted it. Well, by 2000, Zogby had lost his mojo. But Rasmussen had come up and had that election right. But over time, Scott Rasmussen sold Rasmussen Polling, and he's no longer with Rasmussen, and they've lost their mojo. And so up came Richard Barris in 2012 and 2016. And so far, he's pretty much held his mojo. He missed a couple of races in 2022, but otherwise, he's been pretty good. Well, so these pollsters go through these cycles, and part of why they do that is what is called the panel. The panel are who they are interviewing and how they are interviewing them. Now, there's 3 important things. There are 3 important things to remember about polling. It's who you talk to, how you word the question, and then how you weight your sample to make sure that who you talk to was accurate. It's interesting. Barris and I have different ideas about voter registration. I think voter registration is still very important and is a very good indicator of how a state will vote. He says it's backwards, that the voting proves the registration, not vice versa. But at any rate, all the registration trends, North Carolina, Arizona, Pennsylvania, any place where we can track voter registrations, they are trending Republican big. I mean, Florida has gone from something like a Democrat plus 500,000 state. There were 500,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans around 2012 to now a Republican plus 800,000 state. Folks, Florida by election day will be Republican plus 1 million. That's how much that state has changed. Some of it is DeSantis. Much of it is not. Much of it was Rick Scott, who really, by cutting size of government, brought a lot of people to Florida. But anyway, same thing in North Carolina. North Carolina has seen the Democrat lead. Remember, the Democrats led in voter registrations in both 2016 and 2020, and Trump won the state handily, easily, both times. Okay, well, the Democrats' voter registration has been cut again in North Carolina. Pennsylvania, it's been cut huge. At one time, it was almost an 800,000 Democrat lead. Now it's down to less than 160,000. That's shocking. That's really amazing. And kudos, by the way, to Scott Pressler, who's been out there for years registering more Republicans. Way to go, Scott. So my point is, all the trends are going against Biden. When I say there's 3.5 months left, that's not there's 3.5 months left for him to reverse this. That's not what I mean. There's 3.5 months left for him to dig himself a much, much deeper hole. And the Democrats are panicking. This is why they wanted at first to get rid of him, because they're very worried about the Ohio Senate seat and the Arizona Senate seat in particular, probably also the Montana Senate seat. We should win without any effort West Virginia. That's a gain. That's a +1. Kari Lake in Arizona, polls have been all over the map showing her up 2 or 3 to down by 10. I think she's down 2 to 4. And President Trump at 6 points nationally would be able to pull her over the line. Tim Sheehy in Montana, some polls have shown him up 2. I think it's probably a tie. President Trump should pull him over the line. So we have a very good chance with a high Trump turnout of a 3-seat gain in the Senate. And that's not counting Ohio with Bernie Moreno. Bernie Moreno is not as well known as Sherrod Brown. He's got a lot of name recognition stuff to fight. But again, Trump is going to win Ohio. Now listen to me. Trump's going to win Ohio by 10 or more. Last time he won it by 8.5. Before that, he won it by 8. The trend is constantly going toward more Trumpy Ohio. And so Moreno may very well be pulled over by Trump in Ohio. Right now, I don't have that as a win. Right now, I don't have Arizona as a win. Right now, I have Montana as a toss-up. But all of those states are trending, and that's the important thing. So my last word on trends here is this. What you want to follow are not these individual polls like Morning Consult or Rasmussen. Rasmussen, for example, had Trump up 10 in Arizona. No, that's as bad as having him up 7 in Pennsylvania. It's not happening. There's no way it's that big. But he is up in Arizona. Watch Real Clear Politics average, and there Trump is up 3 points. Now, just as I was coming on this show, Emerson came out with a poll of the swing states, and guess what? It showed Trump up every single swing state by 2 to 3 points, 5 in the case of Georgia. I think it was 4 in Arizona, matching all of those swing state polls that came out in the last week. So I think it's safe to say that President Trump right now is up about 6 nationally and is up anywhere from about 2 to 4 points in all of the swing states. I think he's ahead everywhere. And I think Minnesota, Maine, Virginia, New Mexico are in play. And I think New Jersey is very close to being in play. All right, before I sign off, let me remind you that I've got the wild world of history and the wild world of politics. If you want more politics, go to the wild world of politics and sign up for the Insider. It's only $6 a month. You'll get my political commentary 3 days a week. You'll get awesome video series. My most recent one is finished. It's called Globalism, Then and Now. It's a great series. I've also got the Reagan, the American President series, some 22 videos. You're going to love these. On the Wild World of History, I've got video series on the VIP subscription as well, 50 hours worth on various topics such as the atomic bomb or the charge of the Winged Hussars. But I also have a full curriculum in U.S. and world history that goes with my Patriots History of the United States, and I teach every lesson in video. So check it out. All right, I will maybe see you back here next week on my regular fill-in slot on Thursday. Stay wild.